When last we left our heroes. Welcome back to another campaign diaries. Once again, we continue with the Tales of the Oovrenguard. This time, we dive right into the heat of the campaign of the new story arc. So, in the last session, which was kind of the last video, we talked about kind of the epilogue, kind of all the adventures they've been doing after defeating Fritzless, as they were getting kind of set up and reacquainted, getting ready for kind of to do their next thing. In doing so, they came across a couple interactions with some elementals, including Osborne being given a strange jar containing mysterious, ethereal liquid, along with 4 elemental stones. Figuring out that this was probably something to do with the elementals, they kept fighting. They realized they needed to kind of figure out what the heck was going on. So when we started this session, basically, the first thing they did is they said that we go to Renabas, and we are going to... They basically spent some time going around the city trying to find where the store where he had been given this, them trying to see if they could find anybody who matched, who looked suspicious, and it was pretty easy. Some investigation checks and that sort of thing, and they did come across, at 2 separate times, they came across 2 groups. Danny came across one group who he proceeded to slaughter single-handedly, and Osborne came across another group from which Osborne was able to basically try and get a little bit of information, basically some ideas that there's Osborne overheard them talk about a Master Lareth in the moat house and taking the corpses. They had a couple bodies in a wagon, take these corpses to Master Lareth. Of course, then the question became, well, who is Master Lareth, and where is this moat house? And they were kind of unsure of where to go and kind of what to do exactly. And then they decided, let's go back to where Osborne was, and let's see if we can kind of corner these people and force them to talk. Well, they did, and what they pretty wisely did is they had Esther and Elias went on, where it was an alleyway, and Esther and Elias got on one end, and Danny on the other, and Danny, being a tiefling, knows spells like thaumaturgy. And basically he starts, coming in, bellowing voice, and huge kind of dramatic. Esther and Elias both used minor illusions to make Danny look like he was wreathed in flames as he's walking down. And, of course, he makes an intimidation check, Danny does, with his high charisma. He's able to actually kind of make set these cultists on edge. And, however, things went a little bit sideways when clearly the person in charge, this group, comes up and just, it's like, the Prophet of Fire? And, of course, Danny's like, I don't know what the Prophet of Fire is, but okay, yes, I am absolutely the Prophet of Fire. And basically what they got a little bit was just the Prophet of Fire is clearly some sort of revered being they expect to come and kind of help usher in the reign of elemental chaos. I mean, Danny and the rest of the group are like, we have no idea, we're certainly not, but if this will make them friendly towards us, we'll certainly play along. And that's exactly what they did. They managed to convince this group that they need to go to Master Lareth and meet up with them and kind of go from there. And the group was like, oh, of course, and they put them in the wagon, they head out, and they start heading west, and they take them to this, sure enough, to this moat house. However, they get almost there. They can just see the moat house kind of, at the edge of their vision when they hear a strange sound. From the brush emerges 2 figures, a kobold and a Goliath, who proceed to basically come in and slaughter all the cultists. The cultists hop out and they're like, "Oh, we must protect the Prophet of Fire!" And they go and they try and engage these two figures, who proceed to and the cultists just get slaughtered, and the Goliath, upon killing all the cultists, the Goliath and the kobold are about to turn on the party members when they're like, "Hey, yo, we're with you. We totally do not like the cultists. Well, we're with you." And the guys are like, "Oh, okay." Now, these 2 figures are Arillo, the Goliath, and Kiko, the kobold, who are both fighting these elementals. Now, their backstories are unknown. I know them, but the players don't. But they were just NPCs. I knew the party was lacking some firepower, some gritty firepower, so I brought in 2 NPCs to help the party out. Well, they now meet up with these 2, and they go to the moat house. They can now see it, and their entire group has been killed. But what they do is they go up and they do the exact same thing. They just have Danny just kind of, he uses invisibility. He appears out of nowhere. Meanwhile, everyone is using, like, minor illusions. He does basically the saber tune, and he manages to convince the people at the moat house that once again that he is the Prophet of Fire, including Master Lareth, who actually is a woman. And she basically, is like, oh, if you're here, then we must quickly take you to the cleric at the Temple of Elemental Evil. He will need to meet you right away. And of course, the players are like, well, absolutely. Okay, we thought this was the base of operations, but I guess not. So they hop in another wagon. And they go. I mean, and there was a little more talking and stuff like that, but this is basically condensed things. There's not too much else to say. They basically just did some talking, got a little bit more information. And so the players hop in, they all hop in together, and they start traveling, again, heading further west, to this Temple of Elemental Evil, which, if you're a D&D fan, you probably have heard of the adventure, and I kind of rip it a little bit. It's mostly I take some of the core ideas, and because I've heard that the book itself is pretty unreadable, I decided to just take the idea and then add my own things into it. So that's hence all the elementals and such. But so, along the way, I said, go ahead and roll me a random encounter, D12, and they proceed to roll a 12. So okay. 3 people. I start doing I put the party in. I figured out what would a random encounter for this be, and I explain. You're flying, and you hear this loud roar, bellow through the air, and a red dragon flies in. And they basically, I had all the cultists fight. They had about like a dozen cultists, and they had Master Lareth. And, the entire party, pretty good sized group. However, they were all clumped together, and they roll initiative, and everyone rolls poorly except for the dragon. The dragon rolls like a 19. Everyone else can barely roll above like a 12. So the first thing the dragon does is he flies over, he sits right in front of them, and he uses his breath weapon, his cone of fire, and he proceeds to basically kill all the cultists. Like, Master Lareth and 2 other cultists survive. Most of the party makes it, but barely. They immediately are like, yeah, we're not doing this. We're not fighting this dragon. So they basically command the last couple cultists to stay and distract the red dragon while the rest of them book it out. And that's exactly what they did. They got Master Lareth, they got the party, and they run. And the dragon, eats the rest of the cultists, and, that was the end of it. But it was kind of interesting. The party has not had a good track record fighting dragons. But after this, they did make it to the moat house, to the Temple of Elemental Evil, and here basically they arrive in, and of course everyone's like, wait, what happened to everybody? What happened to all the cultists? And they're like, yeah, Red Dragon killed everybody. We joke that this is the second time now Danny has lost his fan club, the first being to a Rillo and Kiko, and the second to a Red Dragon. But so they got to the temple, and there's the cleric, and he walks in, he's super ceremonial, he welcomes them in, and he takes them into this chamber where he's got a ritual circle going on. And he basically says, hey, from here, I'll be able to open the portal, and, allow to the elements, to the elemental planes, and from there, then we can begin the reign of elemental chaos. And that was more or less where we left it. The cleric and Master Lareth, they leave the room, allowing the players a little bit how to kind of plan. They are like, okay. They were just basically taking the last couple minutes of the session to plan their next move. I was like, oh, we'll just smash the floor like we did with Fritzlis's Lich Ritual Circle. However, I explained that doesn't go quite as easily. You try and smash it, and there's an energy barrier. And after some inside checks and somebody praying to their gods for religion checks, they realize that they're going to have to go into the 4 towers of the temple and smash some orbs up there. And by doing so, they'll destroy the energy circle, allowing them to actually destroy the ritual circle itself. So now the players know what to do, and now they've got to traipse through they have to go through an entire temple full of enemies, basically, to try and end this. So it's going to be an interesting adventure to see how they go along. I think it's going to be pretty good. I've got a lot of cool tricks up the sleeve, and I'm excited to kind of play for the temple, and I think it's going to go well. I'm excited. I think the players are excited, and I hope you're excited. Thank you guys for kind of tuning in. I just wanted this one to be short because there's not much really to say. But that way you kind of know the setup for this temple. And from there, I'll see you guys next time. Stay cool.